course, yesterday was the firing line. Today is the first time we're going to have the amazing Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And I've had, for several years now, I've had people requesting we have Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Having had a chance to chat with him for several times, I can be certain that he is of similar mental and spiritual kin, because he is a seeker, he is a scientist, and he is a box agnostic, which means he doesn't believe in boxes or being placed in a box. So, Richard Allen Miller, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Great. And it's Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
This last piece there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you're connected by phone or Skype yet. We're going to try to make sure we make the Skype.
I'm on the telephone.
Yeah, we're on the phone. We'll probably by the next segment get you on Skype, so we'll get a good, better sound connection. Give us a little bit for those people.
You want to call me back?
Well, we can do that. I'm not sure if
let's just go ahead and do this for now, unless it's real bad.
Yeah, we'll do this for now, and then at the next segment we'll try to make sure, because I think sounds good. Okay, so for those people who haven't heard about you before, and I guess I can give you kind of a basic summary. Dr. Richard Allen has I think it's GS-18, a security clearance, which is the highest level you can have in the military. He is a physicist. He's an herbalist. He is a mystic. He's a spiritual seeker. He knows things in the higher realm of what we call the nature of reality that questions things, which is good. Everybody's on a journey. Everybody's on a journey during this life. And you should never stop because you're told by your teachers or your masters what reality is. And I think the most important thing is that you should learn to ask better questions. That's the key point of this whole show, is if you don't ask the questions, you won't own the truth. And if you don't own the truth, you won't do anything about it, whether it's our geopolitical system, your physical health, the nature of trying to protect the biosphere, the lies that are going on in terms of literally every realm, whether it's Tier 2 science that's taught at the public universities, or the nature of our galaxy and our universe, and literally the nature of God himself and what we are as beings. So let's start exploring some of those. Dr. Richard, you do a lot of things. I think you have your own show now, too, don't you, elsewhere?
No, I don't do radio. I just I write. That's my thing. And then I do radio to sell my books, but I don't.
Okay, tell us about your latest books. That might be a good start. What's your latest?
Tools for the 21st Century is book 2 in a 3-book series I'm writing. I have a lot of books. This one is on the 8 protocols I developed for Navy SEALs to essentially give them a higher level of survival and make them like a super soldier, capable of doing things that normal people could not.
Well, I think that's important for everybody to be.
I'm writing. I just started writing it this morning. It's called The Non-Local Mind in a Holographic Universe.
Ooh, that's really cool. That's
change the movie.
Tell us about that. Give us a background.
To comment on what you were talking about is a teacher can only take you as far as they themselves have been. And so that's why you seek out the most impeccable and diversity of teachers, so that you can go further than any of them, because this teacher took you to here, and that teacher took you to there. And it's what you're calling me is a polymath. That means I have deep experience in a multitude of unrelated subjects. Actually, they are related, but you had to be me to see it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. A lot of people don't connect it. They don't connect, for example, hyperspace and the reality of the mind or soul, and physical reality and hyperdimensional physics.
Well, we can give you an example of that right now. How about this one? How about the physical plane is IQ, and the emotional plane is how you feel about the physical plane. It's more detail. There's your hyper. It's a level of information or resolution. And so EQ is always better than IQ. IQ means you know something. EQ is you know how you feel about it.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that feel about it part can be what I call hyper-empathic. And I try to explain it.
This is how your higher mind, or God, or whatever you want to, the other 9/10 of your cerebral cortex, whatever. This is how it communicates to consciousness. It uses imagery and feelings, not things. If the elephant is flying, that's irrelevant. The idea of flying, that's different.
Right.
That's how you feel about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Brain, you know how they had these big books that would have interpretation. If you dreamed a turtle, then it meant this, and if you dreamed a cat, it meant that. That's not what we know about dreams now. It's not what the content is, it's how you feel about it, the resolution of it.
Right. And of course, it also, that feeling state determines one of the important principles that we talked about before the show, that the primary problem with our world, and if you want to call it the worlds across this cosmos and galaxy, is the idea that consciousness or consciousness on the physical level struggles against the consciousness on a higher dimensional level. And that struggle creates danger, damage, and collapse of civilizations. Like our civilization, as the Mayans have said, have collapsed 4 times before, and this is the 5th. We're heading toward the 5th catastrophe, if you want to call it. And it's all based on the idea that if we understood that we're both an I and a we at the same time, and we were truly, we call hyper-empathic, whether walking by a plant we could detect its water, or we would not do something harmful to another individual because we would know the psychic, emotional pain of that process on a very clear and crisp level, we wouldn't do it. And that lack of empathy, that's one of the quotes I think, that's why I refer to Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus, as I call a metaphysician. He's trying to teach us metaphysical principles that are much deeper than the kind of the basic things that people pull from the quote gospel to good news. The good news is that we human beings are a hyperdimensional being. We are, in a sense, and Jesus himself says this, we are the collectively the, if you want to call it, the feminine counterpart of God, who's a male counterpart in a sense, and these are just archetypes, they're not physical, of the God of the universe. So we are, in a sense, a supernatural being collectively, not individually, collectively, and our consciousness is both individual and collective. And once we start recognizing that...
Timothy Leary came up back in the 60s with a thing called neurologic circuits, where he proposed that the brain had 8 primary neurotransmitters that were the way you organized information. And so basically these are like resolutions of information. And at the 4th level, not the 8th, which is God, the 4th level is the collective unconscious, or what you call the archetypal level of encounter, where you are me, and I am you, and I am the walrus.
Exactly, yeah. In other words, we're also connected. For example, you've seen this from all kinds of people, and they'll say it in their poetry. You can have a fisherman that senses and knows, or the song of the whales out in the ocean, they can hear it. Or you can have people that are empathic, they're botanists, and they can actually feel the senses of the different plants and orchids they have in their greenhouse. What people need to realize...
in my opinion, the dolphin is a higher level of mammal than man. In fact, orca has a cerebral cortex that's actually twice the size of man, and that mammal is firing 60% of it, where man is only firing 10% at any given moment. Now, if you wanted to know who God is, it would be orca, but not our God necessarily, but God by the definition of being able to go places we're not well enough designed to go.
Right. Yeah, in other words, a level of consciousness to understand the nature of reality at a higher level is what you're trying to say. Very cool. See if we can connect through Skype and get a better sound connection in the break.
I'll get I'll go over to my computer. Okay?
Sounds. If you have questions for Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and we'll have him back in a second talking about these recent books and, of course, his websites. He's got an amazing array of experiences. In fact, I think Veterans Today did a review of some of his background. I think 1961, one of his science projects in high school was actually used by NASA in the Mariner project, which is the Mars flyby, to look at the water content on Mars. Is that correct, Dr. Richard? I don't know if we have him back yet. So, Veterans Today did a lot of research. Of course, he had a GS-18 rating. Still does contract work for the U.S. government. And, as I said, one of his previous books was to try to improve the consciousness control of our special forces so they could be far more functional in extreme circumstances. Dr. Richard, are you back? I can't hear him. there we go. We got Dr. Richard back. Okay. Dr. Richard, tell us about your website so the people that want to purchase your books can log on and get it. What's your website address?
Thank you. I'm richardallenmiller.com. That's ALAN, or oak-publishing.com. I self-publish.
Yeah, Oak Publishing. Okay, perfect.
Oak-publishing.com, yes.
Oak-publishing.com. Richard Allen Miller.
Organization for the Advancement of Knowledge was a think tank I put together when I started working at Boeing. They wanted something like Dr. Cohen's original think tank at Princeton, which I was a member of, and when I was working at Princeton. And it had Battelle Northwest and Douglas United Nuclear, a bunch of others, and we did a bunch of, we ran it like parapsychology. That's what I did. It worked out of the University of Washington.
Right.
And so, what happened next is 40 years later, I resurrected it, handle all my lectures, writing, and research. There it is.
Wow. That's pretty neat. Now, I guess if I were to describe you then, I would say, you know how Wordsmith is a really good poet or author, I would call you a thought-smith. How's that?
Yeah.
In other words, you teach people how to think about thinking, which is cool. If you were to describe the current situation in our world, because there's a lot of conspiracies.
You described it perfectly. We're about to go through a change in civilizations, and we're going to go from being Atlantis to Greece.
Now, tell us about that transition. You mentioned that briefly.
Blood.
Yeah.
And I don't know how bad it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to be. All the earmarks are imminent. And when I say imminent, I mean like right now. It's kind of weird. The ocean currents have changed. That's going to be a mini ice age. We've got Nibiru. I have no clue what that really means. Apparently, it also has a debris field, which means there's going to be a change in pole shifts, geography, just like in the movies. And then there's 2 years, apparently 2 years, of debris right behind it that we get to go through twice.
Yeah, and that debris field, by the way, comes in because Nibiru probably won't physically get by us more than 55 million miles away, but the debris field will be so broad that we will have meteor storms. And we just had a fly past a week and a half ago of a 2.5 mile across giant asteroid that literally was relatively close, too close. In other words, if you could see the neon sign on the side of the asteroid, it says, "Almost gotcha."
Yeah, well, what we need now is Armageddon 2 and go out and save the world twice. It's been, there's cultures that have talked about this, like the Clovis culture, or now our American Indian. When they came out of a cave after the event, they left, cave pictures of the sun blowing up, of this happening and that happening. There it is. And so it isn't like we didn't know this was going to happen. Now, actually, today, you wanted to know the state of the world today. Well, the bad news is the 1%ers are shifting position, knowing that they're not going to probably survive, but they want to have a say or control on how we come out of this in terms of who's managing what.
And that's why you see them.
And when you think of the gene pool, they're probably not even human.
Well, yeah, you and I know things that I'm not. As I say, part of that 90%, I'm not going to go too far because I lose people. But I want to touch on some things.
The thing is, I'm an intuitive physicist. When I come to a fork in the road, I always somehow know which way to go in terms of it's this way, not that way. Now, that's a really nice little gift to have because I don't waste a lot of time going down blind alleys. And we used to do a lot of blind alleys. That's what they call blue sky. They don't do that in research anymore. It either has application or they're not interested. That means there's no more interest in advancing human knowledge.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
That is, they stopped in the 80s. In the 70s, we were still trying to discover as much as we could. We didn't know where it would go. Let's just go follow the road. In the 80s, you didn't get a grant if it didn't have an application for income and money. Money is a theatrical prop. It's not real.
Yeah,
What's real is your labor. And so the whole thing is creepy. And when I say that, there is no interest in advancing medical science. I mean, man, they haven't done anything new in so long. It's crazy. And to realize it's with intent,
it is with intent.
Really
in fact, because I went into medicine in 1973 to find the cause of diabetes, which, by the way, I did with Dr. autoimmune hyperinsulinemia.
We were the first.
Right. And then this year I'm actually publishing my theory about what the cause of diabetes is, because we found all pieces of the puzzle. And I've been talking to a Dr. Leo at UCLA on my theory. What happens is there really is no desire to find an advancement in medicine, whether it's treatment of cancer, heart disease, or extending human lifespan, because like my colleague Dr. Ron Klatz from the Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, who founded it 26 years ago, we are only 5 to 10 years away from what I call zero human senescence, where human beings don't need to get physically older, and where we can actually reverse aging. So the problem is, you see, the powers that be know that there's. I took care of the people at the South Pole Telescope. I've got other classified access information. I'm sure you do too. That the globalists know that there's an extinction level event coming, and they're panicking and building underground cities like crazy, underground high-speed tunnels. They really want to have a totalitarian regime on the surface, not for the sake of the population here, but to make sure we don't prevent their survival. That's what it's all about. And that's why they're not building new infrastructure in America. That's why the economic system is teetering on collapse. That's why they want a nuclear war to be a cover while they dumpster dive into their hotels underground. It's all very nasty. And I want to get into this when we come back with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and his amazing books again, Publishing.com.
Publishing.com, yeah.
Publishing.com and RichardAllenMiller.com. Back in a moment. By the way, just another announcement. I want to make sure that people know I'm going to reactivate ClayandIron.com. Clay and Iron course from the book of Daniel. And as I say, it's all the above government technology, news analysis, blogs. All that will be posted over at Clay and Iron. And, of course, I want to post up links to great authors like Richard Allen Miller. So I'll have a associate's link over there, so you can obtain his books again. It's oak-publishing.com and richardallenmiller.com. And Dr. Richard,
you can call me Rick, by the way, or you can call me Al, or you can call me late for dinner. But
that's good. Okay, we'll call you Dr. Rick. I'm Dr. Bill. You're Dr. Rick. How's that?
Well, okay, but there's okay. Thank you. Sure.
Yeah, I'll just try to keep it.
Medical doctors are way more concerned about titles than scientists. Scientists, you either can do it or you can't do it, and it has nothing to do with your degree.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, that's one of the things. Even as a child, we were able to think of ideas that later could be used on the Mariner mission that was a flyby Mars with the water content analysis. You mentioned on the break you're concerned about CERN, and the occult connections of that. What do you think about CERN and what's going on? Because it's interesting, CERN was knocked out by the same gravity wave that caused the Nepal earthquake.
And that's a new black hole. And basically, the occult group, and there are occult groups within all organizations, somehow they find their way into trying to put a spin on things. Metaphysics and lodge work was always reserved for the ultra-elite of Europe for centuries. It was like advanced physics with a mystery school. It's a little different today with, shrine and, that kind of thing going on. Masonry, as we normally experience it, is a little different than Blue Lodge. Blue Lodge is what you were calling a seeker, wanting something more than what you have. And these occult groups put a spin on things. And this one is trying to bring Apollo, opening a door for Apollo. Now, Apollo is also known as the Destroyer. It's there's mythology, who knows if it's true, such in whatever, that talked about Enlil and being the destroyer, the second brother, not the creator, Yahweh. And you have to understand, in the old Bibles, they made a distinction between Yahweh, the boss, and Yahweh, the creator deity. The creator deity in the old Bibles is a really vengeful, uptight person. I mean, he's throwing his weight around and blowing up this and damaging that and whatever, and not very solid or secure, if you will. If you'll worship me, then I'm going to destroy you. Why would God care? It's there it is. It's an unusual situation. This group is trying to bring on biblical prophecy, and it's real creepy to watch them ghost dance in the center of the. I've got a video of them ghost dancing. I can't believe it. These are a ritual, and right there where they're going to turn it on. And what's that about?
Well,
I have to ask these questions.
Right, it's good questions. Here's some of the things
that part is a concerning question. I don't know if it's a good one, but yeah,
it is. Well, there's a couple of things that I'd like to ask you about. Firstly, what I've heard that CERN is for, and it has Kali, which is a destroyer in Hindu Buddhism.
Yeah, Kali, Apollo,
yeah. And of course, the same as Apollo or Apollyon that's in the Bible. It's the same thing, basically. Every 3,650 years is return of what's called Herculobus, which in ancient Assyrian mythology is the return of the Death Star. You can see it in cartouches in ancient Egypt.
There are two brothers, if you follow Sitchin and those kinds of historians or pseudo-historians. I can tell you that history as we know it is not correct. I know that. Antarctica. Where's that in the history books? In
exactly.
fact, when I was there, I saw a Viking base from the 14th century. I mean, they've been in Antarctica for a long time. And when the Clovis culture came out of these caves, that means we knew this event of changing civilization. We've known this for almost 200 years.
Right, exactly. And that's why, for example, Neuschwabenland
talking about it and, prepping up for mankind. And really, it does not have to be a bad thing, the end of things. It's actually an opportunity to move to the next level. And the last thing I could say about all of that is education is the one thing you do get to take with you.
Exactly. Now, here's the important part. What CERN is doing is they're trying to map out if you want to call it, the Higgs field of the galaxies, which is the wormholes. Number two, they're trying to
create a singlet, and which
right, and they're trying to open up. They're trying to develop the technology for warp drive or intergalactic travel.
Or being able to do something creepy like create another universe. How's that sound?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're trying to open wormholes and we call hyperdimensional gates, if you want to call stargates.
Yeah, hyperdimensional, by the way, was a term that Dr. Charles Muses used when I studied with him at MIT. It is no longer hyperdimensional math. It has moved to string theory, superstring theory, and now they've got another one. They keep coming up with new math, trying to figure out how it all works.
And what do you think of that? You're talking about the membrane theory, right?
I'm sorry, sir?
Membranes, that's the one that goes beyond
membranes,
string theory.
That was, what was that? That was Bozeman. No, not Bozeman. That was, no, membrane. I forget. It's a special function that you work with membranes, circular membranes, because of resonance and things like that. I forget what math that is. I haven't used it in 50 years. But
yeah, one of the things that I like to tell people is that the reason why CERN is so hell-bent to doing this is because they're trying to become a galactic civilization, and they want to basically...
Well, whatever they think they're trying to do, it's gonna, leave a big, serious... It's probably going to create another galaxy. That's probably one of the ways that happened.
Well, galaxies are created by...
that's what they do.
Yeah, well, the singlet actually creates galaxies because it creates a black hole, and the black hole's energy emerges in stars calling a galaxy. Galaxy actually is born from the mother of a black hole. And black holes...
There's some question on that math between Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose. And Penrose, one of my teachers, actually talks, rather than on white and black holes, talks more about torus twistor space, where space curves in on itself like a vortex.
Well, that's the Higgs field, which they're trying to map.
It may not be appropriate to call it a black and white hole as much as it might be something weirder.
Well, yeah. Well,
if you're interested in that map, Roger Penrose has a book out called Geometric Universe, which is actually a very good book. Now, he actually co-authored a book with Stephen Hawking, and the name escapes me right now, but what they would do is point-counterpoint, where, on their argument on the difference between a black hole and twistor space. And actually, at the end of the book, they came to the same place.
Well, it makes sense, because here's what I think. There's 5 dimensions to our lower realm of I call the entropic universe. And the 5th is the Higgs field, which is curved time-space, or the time-space warp, which creates wormholes that are naturally part of the galactic structure, cosmic structure of the universe. And the fact they came to the same conclusion means they use different math, but they use the same observations and analysis, in the sense, in the end, with just different terminology.
Warning you that it's time to break.
I can hear the bumper. Amazing discussion. Again, this publishing is publishing.com, and richardallenmiller.com. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and we did have a caller from California, but we're going to carry that call over to next hour when it's more appropriate to a medical question. Dr. Richard Allen, we were talking about some really kind of interesting things. If you were to give solutions, and of course I know you have some remarkable things in your books. If you want to just kind of say a few titles of the latest ones you have available. What would you say are the top 3 or 4?
I have a lot of different areas I write. I have The Modern Alchemist, which is on Jungian psychotherapy. I have the Encyclopedia of Alternative Agriculture, which is in agriculture. I have I have books on magic. I write on ritual magic and how to form dialogue with your higher self, which is one of the things all of us want to do, is have you have to have self-realization before you can have God realization. In magic, they would call that knowledge and conversation. That means that your higher self gives you the answers you're seeking with consciousness. And that place that's halfway to God, it sounds to me like that's the place you currently enjoy. That place where you have access to knowledge that you can't explain where you got it.
Exactly. Now, basically, I tell people I'm not special, I'm just a forerunner. And that happened because of death at birth in 8.5 and of circumstances since then. And I'm not special. I think that the human race is going to have to make some significant changes in the structure of how we relate to our higher self. And I've resuscitated thousands of people, and many of them had near-death experiences, came back completely changed. And they were changed because they became aware of a higher level of reality that was more real than the physical world they came back to. And they started to realize that their purposes in life were considerably different than what they thought and previously. They weren't chasing money. They're more interested in relationships. They're more interested in balance. They're more interested in things that had more lasting or eternal sense in terms of civilization and their family. And even the biosphere, a much more empathic sensation toward every other living thing on the planet. And that makes that kind of human race is the only one that's going to be, in a sense, catastrophe-proof, despite what the galaxy and the cosmos and the sun sends to us. If we are, as I say, I'm a mortar man for the New Jerusalem and a tailor of the coat of many colors. I'm here to try to bring people to a higher level of asking questions about their own nature of what they are as a being, so that we as a civilization will survive. Because even the law, we have Dr. Fred Graves, even the law itself in a constitutional republic is all based on the idea of a higher self, and that we are of infinite value, and so is everyone else and every other thing in our world. So we should be the stewards of a planet, not the destroyers. Unfortunately, we have become destroyers of the planet, not stewards.
There is an American Indian Chief Sealth, also known as Chief Seattle, that in 1857 said in a historic speech, quote, "How can man own the land he lives on? How can he own the air he breathes? We are only here for a brief moment. We are only caretakers." And we have completely forgotten that it was a California buy-up, man, and owning property and good to go. The place is nuts. The whole thing is based on theatrical prop, money. It's not real.
Right. Yeah. It is, actually. It's I call prestidigitation, as they say in magic. It's prestidigitation.
Well, that's legerdemain. That's sleight of hand rather than sleight of mind.
Yeah, well, the sleight of mind, exactly. I like that term. That's good.
Of the experience.
The sleight of mind is pretty. And of course, the latest sleight of mind is they now say they can't keep the interest rates this low unless they get rid of physical money. So everything's in cyberspace. And people have known that I've said this before, and I boasted to say that if someone thinks they know more about the quote the coming matrix or the mark of the beast system, there's no individual who's ever drawn breath or had a pulse knows more than I do about the system, technically and spiritually, what's coming. And it's very, very close.
It's an opportunity to move to another level of awareness. And
exactly. And we just get to choose the future. We collectively
really,
get to...
It has to do with intent, which is different than intentionality. And that distinction is called the Stanford argument at University of Stanford, Stanford University. They have a big philosophical debate on the distinction between intentionality and intent. Intent is what happens at the end of the day. Whether you kicked and screamed and you did something you didn't think you wanted to do or not, your intent was to do that. Now, how you do that has to do with the idea of either flowing or creating karma. And you have that choice. And that's where attitude and the way you look at things, a glass half full as opposed to glass half empty. And you have that choice. And so if you choose to look at it one way, it limits the experience and leads to a type of stressor that's different than if the mountain came to Buddha. That's where everything just falls into place. And the way Aleister Crowley put it, if you're doing your true will, none will say nay. That means even your enemies want you to do what you're doing. In fact, I have some interesting stories about Sharon Singh in that regard, but that'll be for another time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, of course, if you were to give the top 2 or 3 things you'd say in the closing minutes of a quote, what would you say mankind needs to do to create a solution to decrease the level of destruction and chaos that's going to occur?
Yeah, well, it's the 3 words used for America today and other countries is ignorant, ill-informed, and complacent. And really, it's time to start walking your talk. It does not mean you're going to save the world, but your children are watching you. And that's where they learn how to be a pedophile or a gambler. It's, the children are basically like little mini-me. And so even if you're not going to save the world, your child is watching how you did it. That's how they're going to do it, and they might have a chance.
Exactly, yeah. And of course, what I think is there will be a remnant of civilization that will survive what's coming. That remnant, by the way, won't be surviving because I dive into underground hotels under the crust of the earth.
You're the bowling alley and whatever. Yeah, it's all kind of crazy, and I don't know how it's going to play. Basically, I don't think any place on Earth is safe. So that's probably why we're on Mars.
Well, I think also, I think here's what I on my understanding is people don't understand how many times we've actually been rescued by what I call the Greek word is angels or higher dimensional beings. If we actually had a kind of a tally, an accounting tally of the number of times we've actually been personally or nationally or the world has been saved from disaster. I remember talking to my friend, Colonel Lynn Wills, who's the director of the radar command at NORAD. And, of course, we were cutting up a roast in our home in 1994 in Colorado Springs. And he told us he went to DEVCON 4. And, of course, what happened is that they had almost gone to launch on command sequence. And, of course, what happened was misinformation that the Russians had already done a launch sequence of nuclear weapons, and it was mistaken because it was a near space object that they thought they mistaken from their satellites. And same with the Russians.
It is, Dr. Strangelove, just like in the movies. You want to know what's going to happen? Follow Hollywood. And the one I am going to say is going to happen shortly is the day after tomorrow. The ocean, is probably going to rise 60 meters. That's best guesses now.
In fact, I can tell you I've been to the future to see what the geography of the world is. California will be a series of peninsulas and islands. North America will be 1,200 miles further south. The equator will pass through Havana. The world will be a completely different place. The population and people will be a reformed type of human race that will be much more gentler and empathic. The idea of nation states that are at war with each other will be a faint memory, almost like anathema to the idea of human existence. It's like Einstein said, he knows that the Fourth World War will only be fought with sticks and stones, because the idea of nuclear weapons to cause devastation to civilian populations, the idea of allowing Fukushima to destroy the North Pacific Ocean, these things will be out of the consciousness of a human race that survives what's coming.
Yeah, there's a bad news thing here, if we have one moment. When the grid goes down, and it's going to go down,
right,
all of those Fukushimas, there's over 400 Chernobyls that are going to go critical.
Well,
and
you know that.
If it freezes and stops everything, when it thaws out and you crawl out of the cave, there won't be anything to return to.
Yeah, that's disturbing. But I'm sure that there's a lot more rescue involved in the universe than the hired planes, as the Most High God and His angels are watching out for us, if you want to call it, across the cosmos, the universe, and above. If it hadn't been for that, we would probably be destroyed a long time ago.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Again, the publishing is oak-publishing.com and richardellenmiller.com. We'll have Dr. Richard back on soon. And back in a moment with Hour 2.
Did you know some countries are